I am a Unitarian Universalist who does stewardship consulting. I work with many congregations, and I've been a long-time lay leader in my own congregation in Edmonds, Washington. I'm going to make my way over the mountains right after this. There's snow on those mountains, I know. That's why I've got to get started, so I'm still doing it during the day, and I can go as slowly as possible and stuff. So what is a financial feasibility study? It is a study conducted with members of your congregation. Usually around 20% of the giving households are part of a financial feasibility study. I conducted extensive in-person, usually around 1 hour interviews with about 20% of your giving households, and those households that I interviewed cross demographics of financial capability and age and length of time with the congregation, as many as we can get. And the study, though, is weighted toward the largest givers in your congregation. So I will share with you what that looks like and how the study represented your congregation. I do analytics with the results of my interviews in order to determine a narrower frame of what it is that I find and believe that you can raise for your coming capital campaign. I also do qualitative analytics on what is the emotional tenor of the congregation for doing a capital campaign, specifically this capital campaign. So it helps you to know these things because it helps identify how much you can raise. That way you can hone building plans if you need to. You can move into your capital campaign with a strong knowledge of what's going to happen. Some of the major gifts may already be able to be folks who have made indications to me and who have allowed me to share their information with your campaign finance team. They can go out and gather some of the major gifts that will be, those are the sort of biggest dollar pieces of your puzzle before you actually launch your campaign. So just a little bit of, well, I have this unbelievably boring slide up here, a little bit of what is a capital campaign. A capital campaign is done in 2 phases. So there's going to be a leadership phase of your capital campaign that will begin almost immediately in the next week to 10 days. And that is also called sometimes the quiet phase. So it's before you have the hoopla, exciting kickoff, which you're going to have on November 15th. And it is a time when leaders in the congregation are asked to make their pledges. So if you may find that someone calls you, a visiting steward who has been trained by me over the last day, calls you and asks to come visit you to talk to you about the campaign and to collect your pledge. Please say yes. It's nice to share our money stories. So, and no one's coming around to twist your arm or to ask you to do more than you're comfortable with. This is about sharing with each other what it is that's going to happen and what it is we are most interested in about what is going to happen. So when that phase will end at the kickoff, or a couple of weeks before your November 15th kickoff. And that way, when you kick off the campaign, what you'll be able to do is say, hey, we have 50 or 60 or 70% of this already committed in pledges. We need everybody else to participate so we can get all the way to where we want and maybe a little further so we could build that balcony or we can put solar on our roof. So that's what that the next phase will have all these visiting stewards calling every household in the congregation to set up a time to have a face-to-face. So again, please say yes. It's a time to like share stories. You don't want to talk about the building? Like, why not? Actually, but you don't have to talk about the building. You don't have to talk about your money part if you don't want to. You just make your pledge at that time, and the person's been trained to give you some privacy around that. And that, but talk with each other about what you're doing, how you're directing this great current of capital toward building a facility of beloved community. Here's why. Just saying. You are the beloved community. You embody it. You know what you're doing. This is going to make a facility that is fully accessible and welcoming to all, that is large enough. And your building team will continue to hone these plans. They are not like written in stone yet. There's been a tremendous amount of work on this project, and these feasibility study results are very positive, and that in large part is a direct result of the work that your building team has done to get input from all of you and the preparation you all have done. The great amount of time that has been so frustrating has actually created a situation where you have some very serious positive results. So the results of the study are from 47 different individuals, and they represent 33 pledging units in your congregation. I held interviews with 40 of those people, and then I allowed the building and capital teams to take the survey online. It was a standardized survey, so everyone had the same set of questions. They covered support of the campaign. They asked for concerns and compliments. Those questions, not just financial things. I actually also talked to people about legacy gifts, and I would recommend that this congregation think about having like a workshop for folks about how to do that. How do you make a bequest to this congregation? Because lots of people were interested. Now, I also identified some volunteers for the campaign. So when I did the quantitative, what I do is I do a variety of different financial scenarios based on the results that I got. The results are adjusted somewhat for the bias when large people are indicating very, very large gifts. I took those out to do the calculations. Folks were really, really familiar with this project. Like, your team has done a remarkable job. Compliment them. You have done a remarkable job coming to the meetings and paying attention and focusing on what's been happening. It was the whole thing was given very high levels of support for when I asked about how important is this to the future of this congregation? How important is this to your individual vision of the future of this congregation? Generally, people said 8, 9, and 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. People were really grateful to the folks who have done all the work on this, really grateful. The concerns that came forward were not ones that set alarm bells off for me at all. People were worried. All right, so here are the results. Sorry, I put that slide up and now you get to look at it. The results were that the folks in the study indicated contributions, they themselves, totaling $1,172,000 plus some. That was 7.8 times the annual giving represented by those same people. 7.8 times. When I was here a year ago, I told you that folks, generally, congregations can raise 3 to 5 times their annual giving.
But maybe though, does everyone...
So that, I literally had to call my fellow stewardship consultants and say, I'm getting, like, you can't imagine how many times I ran the numbers. I'm getting these really strange, skewed results. What do I do? So, yeah.
So that total of, in that first bullet, is that the actual total?
That's the gifts indicated. So I don't, people don't make pledges to me in the feasibility study. Those are not pledges. What they are was when I asked, at what level do you think you can give? I showed them a chart and they would like show me where on that level. And then I would ask, if you're willing to give me a number that is a specific number inside that level, would you do that? And some people did and other people didn't. And so the number I took for the people who didn't was the bottom number of the level. Okay? So these are gifts that, they are not gifts yet. They are indications of the amount that people plan to pledge.
But that's just a sample you talked about?
That is correct.
So, like you said, sample.
Well, let me walk through that for you, okay? I'm going to finish this, but then I will walk right through that because that's very important. So the gifts indicated ranged between $250 to $200,000. The gift chart that I showed people had 2 levels that were higher than $200,000. And so I was all worried that you wouldn't make it because I didn't get anything in those 2 top tier levels. Pardon?
Per year or?
No, this is a capital campaign runs over the course of 3 years. So this would be, these are the full-on pledge for the capital, for all the capital campaign. Your campaign, if you make a pledge and you make your first gift, you can do it in 2019. It will then travel over 3 more tax years. So it's just because of the timing of this campaign. So folks can make gifts in 4 tax years, but it's a 3-year campaign. And you can do it however you want. There's no, when you receive your own pledge form, it'll ask you, how do you plan to pay this? Do you plan to pay it monthly, annually, all at once, at the beginning, middle, or end? How do you want to do it? What's best for you? So 6 of the family households that I interviewed actually clearly indicated that they might give more. So that was amazing, and 33 of the 47 individuals suggested that if you're close to the goal, they might give more, or or might give in a second ask. So if you get all the way there, but then you want to add that balcony or the solar or the facing of the outside of the building, and your campaign team comes out and says, "Would you give to this?" So that was like fully 3/4 of the people said, yeah, I might do that. I saw when I looked at the indicated gifts plus what might happen with the folks who indicated they might give more, I saw that you had a potential contribution gift level or pledge level from this particular group of $1.4 million. That's just possible. 4 of the indications were $100,000 or over. 7 more were $50,000 to $100,000. So really big gifts that lots of people are indicating. One of the questions that I ask people is, how many people do you think might be able to make a gift over $10,000 to this campaign? And people, that the median answer to that was 15. You blew that out of the water in the feasibility study. You guessed wrong. You guessed low. You guessed low. So here is, the three columns on the right, on your left, the three columns on this side were a gift chart that I showed people. See those top ones? One says 250 and one says 350 or higher. Yeah, those were the two that I didn't find anybody. I was like all worried. I was very worried. And then, so the two columns on this side show how many of the households indicated which level that I interviewed, okay? And then it also shows the total that they indicated. It's really impressive. So I think there were 20 some odd gifts over $10,000. 10, 25, something like that. So that is amazing because I only interviewed 26% of your households, but those 26%, and here's where I'm going to get to your question, represented 60% of your annual giving. Does that make sense? So one of the things that impressed me with the number of these larger gifts, larger amounts of money, I thought, well, is it all the folks who give at the top who are making these big indications of possible pledges? And the answer to that was no. So that also was very impressive to me. I broke it down by quartiles of giving. So that means that if you take your sort of $250,000 of annual giving and you divide that by 4, how many families give the top 60-something thousand dollars? How many families give the next 60-something thousand dollars, and so on? So that's this little chart that's on this sheet, this slide. It shows you how many are actually in the quartile, how many giving households are in your quartiles. Then it shows how many in the quartile I interviewed. So I had a pretty representative sample, and there were at least 3 major gifts, or gifts over $10,000, made in each quartile.
That's stunning.
That's stunning.
It's unbelievable.
It is a great current. You can move your money to make this beloved community, and you are doing it. I mean, that's like, I'm getting bumps just thinking about that. That is really, really remarkable. So my calculations indicate that you should be able to raise between $1.5 and $1.9 million with a possible stretch goal of $2.3 million.
Let's go for the stretch.
Wow, let's go for the stretch.
Let's do the solar.
Yeah, so that's 6 to 8 times your annual giving. And that it's so remarkable to me that as I said, I had to call my colleagues and say, well, what do you do when this happens? Have you run into this? And they said, be happy. Wow, that's quite a congregation, they said. Yeah, so I just don't, the outpouring of generosity from the people that I spoke to was just, it gives me hope for the world. You give me hope. That's the wrong way, isn't it? So what to do next are a wide variety of things. This is not necessarily in order. But you're going to start conducting your leadership quiet phase soon. Really soon. I think I trained nearly 30 people yesterday to be your visiting stewards. So be kind to those people. It's a really nice thing that they volunteer to do that. And it is actually, it is a life-giving practice to meet with each other, as you guys actually have done this in the past. So maybe you know that already. The building plans need to be honed. Plans need to be made for what's going to happen with the religious education. That was like the number 2 concern that I would hear. What's going to happen to us while we're building this? Let's say we actually can raise the money. What do we do while we're building it? So that's a plan that needs to be made. I know I spoke to Ginger this morning, and I know she's already heading out trying to work on those questions. And then there was also a little bit of an expressed concern around making sure, as you build this large, wonderful, visible, important facility here in Moscow, that you remain the Church of the Palouse. So keep that in your hearts and figure out your way forward. I know you're already doing some initiatives to work that out. The biggest concern around that was those people need to be able to park. So that's important. Like that, yes, I too want a carbon-free world. But I also think that beloved community is deeply important to everybody. So your Pullman and other outskirtsy friends, make space. So that's it. That's what I got for you. I think that's the end of my little thing. Can you do this? Yes, you can. So I have a little quote, and then I'll answer questions, because I think this quote, I know about this quote, and I have never read it to any congregation that deserved it more than you do. Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir the blood and probably will not be realized. Make big plans. Aim high and hope and work, remembering that long after we are gone, our work will continue to be a living thing. Remember that our children and grandchildren are going to do things that would stagger us. So, make no little plans. Now I'll answer questions.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for showing us the hope we have in our hearts. It's really nice to see that visualized.
I am only reflecting you.
Yeah. So my question is, the estimate we got for the building was one estimate, I understand, and it was a couple of years ago, so costs are probably going to be higher. So does the 2.3 million stretch include the additional costs it might to build the building, and will it include where do we go and do we have to pay rent?
So my understanding, I don't know, is Al in here?
Yes.
Al, are you here? Can you just answer that? Thank you.
The 1.7 million includes a contingency amount. I believe it was close to 15% for unexpected things, which you know, let's say that we have to completely redo the sewer system, or we need to have RE over there in 1912 Center, you know, that kind of stuff. So it does include some of that stuff. I'm not going to say it includes everything, and it might actually include everything and have a little bit left over, but we don't really know. So.
And wasn't it fairly recent, Al, that quote?
Yeah,
that's not an old quote.
That's within the last few months, yeah.
And does it include the contingencies, like if we have to go to the 1912 Center and rent there, is the...
Yeah, it includes contingencies. I don't think that was specifically in it, but certainly that would be a contingency, yes. So.
But give generously in your annual this year. she says. Any other questions? Did you got all your questions answered, or?
Let me ask one more. And again, first, just this is just amazing and wonderful. Thank you, Joe. I have to practice on mic holding. This is amazing. So thank you and all the others who've done this great work. So my question is, I'm curious what your experience has been on the difference between a pledge amount and the actual amount that shows up. And
At the end of the 3 years, you
at the
mean?
end, is there sort of a standard percentage, or is that
Yeah.
is there a high variation there?
So it's called slippage, which means that there are pledges that don't get fulfilled over the course of the 3 years. And we recommend to folks to include about a 5% thought. We see slippage that sometimes is as large as 10%, but 5% is a good calculating number. Sometimes it's smaller than that. So that's what I recommend, is to think about the possibility that there's about 5% slippage. But the thing also to remember is that as you get, that over the course of the 3 years, new people will come through your doors. People who didn't yet pledge will pledge. Some people will pledge more than even though they had already pledged to the campaign, or just give more. So that also happens. So there's money that comes in that is unexpected, but there's also some loss, the slippage. Yeah,
Rachel, could you briefly just address for the group that,
Use the microphone so that people can hear.
gotta repeat.
No, it's all
That's
right.
okay.
could you briefly address for the group the relationship between annual giving and the capital campaign? And
Yes.
how we should think about that?
Yeah, so annual giving and capital campaign, pledging and giving are two very separate buckets. So do not reduce your annual giving in order to be able to make a capital campaign gift. The most important, the thing that keeps this place humming, the blood moving through, is the annual giving here. So you must, please give generously for your annual gifts. But, so don't have that affected. I've asked all the stewards to make sure people understand that annual giving is separate from capital giving. You never want to reduce your annual giving in order to give to the capital campaign. Capital campaign giving often comes from some other bucket. So often, capital giving is out of assets rather than income flow for a lot of people. Some people are sort of, their income are their assets, so that's a whole other thing. But the other is, people sometimes, what they do for capital campaigns, there's a wide variety of ways you can give. If it's not obvious to you how you can give, not only can you give stocks directly through brokerage accounts, but you can decide that for these 3 years, you're not giving to all those other charities you give to, and give to this. Just for temporarily, because this is building a future. You can decide that you're not going to buy that new car, or you're not going to take that big European vacation that you had saved up for, or you have a special chunk of money for. You can decide to redirect funds that you have for something else to this. Many people do. Some folks ask their parents for an advance on their bequest in order to be able to give to a capital campaign. You could give, if you have a planned bequest, you could decide you want to give it now. So there's many different ways to think about capital, but it shouldn't eat into your annual. Your annual giving is the lifeblood of this congregation. Yeah, I'll repeat it.
Could you just say a few words about how the chalice lighters
Could I
function into?
talk about a chalice lighter grant? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, so one of my,
What are the requirements for the church to participate as chalice lighters?
and And
In order to get that.
what are the requirements to participate in a Chalice Lighter grant is what the question was, and what that might look like. So one of my recommendations is that as you move along this path, I would probably say toward the end of the building project, you might pursue a Pacific Northwest District Chalice Lighter grant. I don't know all of the details, but I do know that 30% of your congregation has to be participants in the Chalice Lighter thing, meaning chalice lighters, people who make small annual 3 times a year contributions to other congregations that are needing some funding. Those grants, I think, range usually from like $20,000 to $40,000 kind of thing, aren't they? So it would be small compared to the overall size of your project, but it could be to pursue something specific that you really want to have. Yeah, solar. It could be used to do a variety of different possibilities for you. So that is one of the ways, and you might want to, like, if you don't have 30% of your people as chalice lighters, you might want to do a little bit of a push on that. I know my congregation did that a couple of years ago. We got a technology grant this year, so they have smaller tech grants that they do sometimes also. Any other questions?
I have an observation. From my Christian background, this has the feel of the loaves and fishes story.
This has the feel of the loaves and fishes.
Food around, nothing to eat, and then probably somebody shared a little with his neighbor, and then that more sharing. All of a sudden, there was enough for everybody. So I'm inspired by this presentation and I'm blown away by the generosity of some of those major donors. And so I'm already planning to give more than I intended.
Beautiful. All the giving inspires more giving. Thank you. Thank you. It is that great current, that great flow. You bring people along. That's a beautiful thing. Thank you. Anything else? Nope.
Just a big thank you.
Rock and roll, folks.